You know it's not a good weekend when you record the entire video and realise you're using your default laptop microphone. Yeah, I didn't want you guys to live through that one. So, apologies if this is out a little bit later. I've had to completely redo it. Silly me, that's on me. However, lots to talk about today. The big update, and I posted a little thing on the community page. Qualifying has it's been cancelled on the Saturday completely, moving over to Sunday morning. I've got a full timetable up on the community page, but also, before you go running off, there's one in this video, so you can screenshot it if you like. Of course, I wasn't able to fit in every single time zone, so you might have to do a little bit of correction there with your own zone, but I tried to be as global as possible. Sorry, in Australia, I didn't quite get around to you guys. However, I believe it's the most pain in the backside for the UK. Horrible times for us, but that's probably fair considering it's usually quite nice for us. If you're new around here, practice report, we talk about FP1, FP2, we do a little bit of your predictions from yesterday's video, but today I want to start with the update. So, how this is going down this weekend. Practice 3, completely cancelled. We've had all the practice done. So this is for the first time, this is a complete look at all the practice sessions for the Japanese Grand Prix. What it also means is with qualifying and the race on Sunday, tomorrow we have no running whatsoever. Which I think is quite interesting. The drivers will have a whole day with no running, and for some of them, it didn't go completely swimmingly this morning. A few on-track incidents, a few stoppages, and a few spins for a few of the drivers. So that'll be interesting to see who decides just to chill out, who decides to get on the simulator as best they can. That will be fun. Anyway, those are your times. Local time, it's 10 o'clock for quali, and then 4 hours later, it's the race. So it's not much of a gap in between. And so any drivers that potentially could make a mistake in qualifying, if qualifying goes ahead, that is. But if they do make a mistake, that could really impact them for the race and potentially could mean a pit lane start or no start whatsoever. So I think the drivers in quali, even if it's dry, won't be pushing out 100%. Because they've got to try and save the car if they can. Now, you may have just heard, quali might not go ahead. That is a possibility. What that will mean is that the results from practice 2 today will form the grid. So, the second practice, a lot was at stake today. It gave a completely different vibe to practice, and that's something we don't usually see. I mean, this whole weekend, Typhoon Haggabis is really just throwing a spanner in the works, which, don't get me wrong, is spicing up the weekend. Very nice. However, there is a serious aspect to this, and safety first. I can't really have any complaints about the timing, about the rescheduling, because that obviously is the priority. But I think it's about time we look at some times. I think you've waited long enough. Mercedes won 2 so far in FP1, and I probably should just say, first practice, as I say every weekend, the times from this aren't necessarily relative to the times they'll be doing for the rest of the weekend, and there isn't as much at stake in FP1 as there was in FP2 this particular weekend, but we go through it and analyse it anyway. Bottas, 1:28.731, the fastest time of all, just under a tenth in front of teammate Lewis Hamilton. Then, quite a big gap back to the 2 Ferraris. Vettel just edging his teammate Charles Leclerc, but those two once again very close indeed. Then came the 2 Red Bulls, Verstappen again ahead of Alex Albon, but I will just say 3 tenths again for Albon. That's usually the kind of gap he's been having since he joined Red Bull. Not too bad, I don't think, from the Thai driver. Carlos Sainz once again best of the rest. Then came the 2 racing points. Lance Stroll in the top 10. There's a surprise for you. And Lando Norris, the final driver, in the top 10. Bottom half, Romain Grosjean, P11. He would love to get a big result this weekend. Both drivers at Haas this weekend using, I said this weekend quite a few times there. Apologies, I'm not recording this again. Both drivers using a hybrid chassis this time round. So Grosjean was using the Melbourne spec car for quite a big chunk of this season. Magnussen was using the updated car. They've now found a balance in between, and they've used that for the last couple of rounds during practice, and it seems to be working for them. So they're hoping for a better result this weekend. Kimi Räikkönen P12. Then came the two Renaults of Hülkenberg and Ricciardo. Not going too swimmingly so far for those two. They were expecting a strong result, but it's not looking brilliant so far. Kevin Magnussen P15. Danny Kvyat, the lead Toro Rosso in P16. Only a 10th, however, in front of rookie Naoki Yamamoto. So that was a really strong drive from him. George Russell P18, Robert Kubica P19, and Antonio Giovinazzi, we might as well talk about him first, 8 seconds off the pace, down in P20. He had an issue with the car, very little running so far. No real issues there in terms of his driving, is how I want to phrase it. Obviously, concerns that this could be the only dry running that the drivers get all weekend, or at least proper dry running. So this was a session where all the drivers were trying to go as flat out as they possibly could. However, Bottas was the big story. Straight on the pace, this has been a circuit where Hamilton has been the man to beat since the hybrid era. Only been beaten once at this circuit, that was in 2016, with Nico Rosberg taking his final ever Formula 1 victory. But Bottas looking good so far in the session. Other notable incidents, Carlos Sainz came to a stop while leaving the pit lane. Daniel Ricciardo went extremely wide into turn 1. Doesn't seem to have the balance quite right on that car. And like I say, Naoki Yamamoto, his first ever running in Formula 1, not doing too bad indeed. But I don't want to mess around. FP2 is where it's at. This could be your potential grid for the 2019 Japanese Grand Prix. Of course, there's no predicting the weather. Us people from the UK know that far too well. I'm sure wherever you are in the world, you will know that. Bottas looks like he could claim his 5th pole position of the season, which will actually take him ahead of Lewis Hamilton in 2019, which is quite a fun fact. Hamilton would be lining up on the front row with him, however. Then would be Max Verstappen, who was much closer in the second session. Actually, all of the top 6 much closer. Leclerc would edge out Vettel. Albon, P6, just 6 tenths off the pole time, which again, 3 tenths off his teammate. I don't think that's that bad, to be honest with you. Carlos Sainz, again, best of the rest. He really likes this circuit. Sergio Perez, that Racing Point car, really finding a turn of pace at the moment. Pierre Gasly in his first practice session of the weekend in P9, and Norris again in P10. Those drivers starting outside of the top 10. Kimi Räikkönen will start P11, or would start P11. Sorry, this is quite confusing this weekend. Danny Kvyat P12, behind Gasly so far this weekend. Romain Grosjean P13, again ahead of Kevin Magnussen. Lance Stroll didn't quite go as smoothly in the second session, down in P14. However, if he started in front of the likes of Magnussen, the two Renaults, big thumbs up. Good job that would be from Lance Stroll. Giovinazzi couldn't quite manage to get the pace advantage over Raikkonen that he's had since the summer break. However, we could still have quali, and I believe this will be, for quite a few drivers, their first ever time in Japan, because this is not a race that they do for Formula 3 or Formula 2, so that's a really interesting one to look at for the likes of Norris, the likes of Albon, the likes of Giovinazzi. I think actually Giovinazzi did do it in GP2 a couple of years back. Let me know. Kevin Magnussen P16. Then came the two Renaults of Ricciardo and Hülkenberg. Yeah, down in 17th and 18th, so that's not great. Robert Kubica 19th and George Russell 20th perhaps is one of the most interesting things in this entire potential grid. Kubica, if it stays like this, will start in front of Russell. Will qualify in front of Russell for the first time in 2019. It's a small consolation, but I'm sure he will take it. Practice 2 results could be big this weekend. And we've spoke about it before in 2019. Drivers making mistakes in FP2 and getting penalties for the race. This is potentially why they have done that. I mean, it's a very rare circumstance, but we've seen it can happen. Practice 2, to be honest with you, wasn't really as interesting as the first practice. A few drivers clipping the curbs here and there. Valtteri Bottas had a spin out of the final corner. Didn't affect his confidence. He seems quick this weekend. He means business. But, and I've said this for the last few Grand Prix, I truly believe we're going to have a fight between all of the top 6 drivers this weekend. All of those cars looking in really good shape and looking like cars that potentially could win the race. So I truly believe drivers like Verstappen, like Hamilton, drivers that are particularly good in the wet, could really make the difference this weekend. Before we go, I always like to have a look at your predictions from yesterday's video. Ro Yi, I predict Typhoon will cancel quali. You're not far off there, mate. They've definitely cancelled it for Saturday, so I'll give you that one. Pole position, Lewis Hamilton. Front row, Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Interesting. Shock, Lance Stroll. There you go. I hope that means Stroll getting a good result. Pole position, Max Verstappen for Tom Ryan. Front row, Lewis Hamilton. So a lot of people predicting Hamilton Verstappen on the front row. Biggest shock, turn 1, lap 1 crash. That would be juicy. First retirement, Magnussen. Best of the rest, Carlos Sainz. And the top comment coming from Complex. I didn't give you long to do it this time, so apologies for that. Pole position, Max Verstappen. Race winner, Sebastian Vettel. He loves this circuit. Podium, Verstappen and Hamilton. And biggest shock, Lando spins from P6. This would only be his second ever race in Formula 1 in the wet conditions. His first in Suzuka. So hopefully it doesn't happen for you, Lando. Fingers crossed. Again, this is another look at your schedule, and apart from that, I will leave you there. Don't know what this weekend is going to look like. It could be a complete washout and we have no more running. They decide no points. It's just completely up in the air, and sometimes that's what we love about Formula 1. It's so unpredictable. You never know. I will keep you updated, so keep an eye on my Twitter, keep an eye on my community page. I will try and keep you updated, but, and I said this yesterday, the best place to find out news for this is official Formula 1 channels. There will be sites out there trying to clickbait people to believing that there'll be no race, that there'll be half points. Just keep an eye on official Formula 1, please. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Again, practice report, there's never really too much to talk about, but I hope you found it a little bit interesting at least. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you're new, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.